Everybody, it is 3:59 and today we are going to be working on a little apron that you can give to some of those little people in your life. But if you also want a big apron for yourself, I'm going to show you how to use your body measurements to go ahead and make yourself a beautiful little apron. So if you want an apron for a little person or you want an apron for yourself, this is the episode. All right, it is 4 o'clock. Please let me know if you can hear me. I see a couple of people are starting to jump on, so we're going to give them a second. But I'm going to go ahead and go over the requirements for this project, okay? The first thing that you need is the handout. You don't really have to have a handout, but if you want to follow along with me, you can go to my website, and I have a new little tab called Sewing for Little People, and I'm going to be adding all kinds of fabric projects that you can do with fat quarters for little people. So if you have little people, this is it. All right, you're going to click on the handout link, and you don't have to have any of this because I'm going to show you how to sketch it out without printing. So save your printer ink. But for this series, if you want to make little aprons, you can use 6 jelly roll strips that are 2.5 inches wide by width of fabric. Or you can use 1 fat quarter for the lining or 2 fat quarters if you don't want to piece anything. An 18-inch by 20-inch of ultra-thin fusible batting, or if you have embroidery batting or something like that, and then 2 packs of double fold bias binding if you want to do a curvy apron. But I'm going to show you how to make this really fast, and let's go ahead and get started. All right. I'm just checking in. Can you hear me? All right, I see that you guys can hear me. All right, so for this particular apron, I'm going to show you how to make it without a bunch of extra fussy things. So we're going to make an apron that we can make lickety-split. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to grab your scraps. For the little straps of the apron, I suggest that you save, if you have binding strips like I do, these are all my old binding strips. You can save those or pull them out of your sewing basket, and these make great little straps. So if you have any of those, you can grab that. This makes great little straps. I'm going to show you how to make straps using jelly roll pieces. And the first thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and just show you what I've got here. The very first thing that I did is I switched the needle in my machine. I do want you to use a quilting needle. I'm using a 914. I don't know if you can see that, Schmetz. And it's specifically for quilting because we're going to be sewing through a lot of layers, so put a fresh needle in there. The next thing that you need is enough jelly roll strips to cover a fat quarter, and that's going to be about 6. But if you don't have that, you can just pull a fat quarter out of your sewing bin, and that'll work too. You can have 2 of them. I'm using a piece of batting that I pulled out of my sewing room. When I have a quilt that comes off of the frame, I often have these pieces that are about 5 or 6 inches wide that hang off the sides of my quilt. Well, I took those and I did what's called Franken batting. That means I just butted them together, maybe overlapped them by 1/16 of an inch and zigzagged them together. And these pieces of Franken batting are perfect for little kid projects like this that are going to get a lot of wash and wear. If you don't have Franken batting and you're going to actually purchase some batting for this project, I suggest something like embroidery batting, and it looks like this. And the reason why I like embroidery batting is you get about 3 yards in a pack for smaller projects, but it has a built-in stabilizer, so it's great for like jackets, vests, anything that you're going to sew a lot into, and especially if you're going to embroider. So if you want to embroider on the little apron, this is a good option, is embroidery batting. All right, first thing is first, this fat quarter here, it's actually 2 of them, have been laundered, and they've been starched. So I have 2 fat quarters right here, and this has been starched. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a good press. And this is going to be the back of my apron. It could also be the front of my apron because this is going to be reversible. I'm just going to stretch it really well and give it a good press. This is an unwashed fat quarter. If you want to use an unwashed fat quarter, you can. You're just going to get a little bit more of a puckery look. So it just depends on what you want. You can also steam it. So if you don't have time to wash one of your pre-cuts, you can also just use a hot steamy iron, and that will sometimes shrink it up enough that it'll do just what you need. And so if you have a little spritzer bottle, just give it a little press and that should do it. All right. The next thing that I want you to have is I want you to have fabric for the little pocket. I just went into my scrap heap and I found this. This is a little dress I made for my nieces probably about 20 years ago. But this sheer sucker, and I just need a piece that's 8.5 by 11. And I'm going to be folding that in half. So I'm just going to take this piece of paper. And there should be enough on this side. And I'm just going to take and cut it a little bit bigger than what I need. And this is, I don't know what they call this fabric, sheer sucker, but it's that crinkly fabric that we all used to have dresses out of in the 80s. All right, and that goes back in my scrap heap. So I need something for the pocket, right? And the pocket can be embroidered or not embroidered. It's up to you. All right. And this is cut on the fold. So this is 8.5 by 11. If you just have a piece that is 6 by 7, you can line it. It works fine. I'm going to use a slightly bigger piece because I've decided to give you guys a bunch of shortcuts today. All right. Say hello to each other in the chat. If you have any questions, don't forget, put those in the chat. All right, I'm going to show you all of the shortcuts because after I worked on this project, I realized nobody has time for tons of binding, especially in October when you're trying to get all of your projects finished for the holidays. All right, so this is how we're going to do it today, and this is the shortcut method. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to take your fat quarters, if you're going to use 2 fat quarters, and you're going to put them right sides together. And so I'm going to put right side and right side. All right. This has the selvage on the bottom, and then you want this selvage on the bottom. And let me just raise that. You guys can see. Let me get rid of my little thing. So I'm going to put them right sides together. 2 selvages across the bottom. And both of these fat quarters are slightly different sizes, and that's okay. And now I've got to add some measurements. I'm going to have to trim this. And this is true for any apron, not just this one, but any apron. You're going to want to measure, and let me show you. So I'm going to stand up so you guys can see me. So I'm wearing an apron, and in order to fit an apron, you have to decide how long you want the apron. I don't know if you can see me, but I like for my aprons to cover just below my thighs, but I'm going to measure from my chest to the bottom of my apron. And for my grandbaby, I like the apron to be a little bit longer so that she doesn't get stuff all over herself. So that's your first measurement. So from wherever you want the apron to be down to where the bottom of the apron is. Then you're going to want to measure with your tape measure around like this. You're going to take your tape measure and you're going to measure where you want it to stop, which is about 3/4 of the way back, because you want your apron to go around your body, but not all the way around your body. And that's your width. So that's how wide I want the apron to be, right? So I'm going to measure from here down to where I want it at the bottom. And then from side to side. For me, it happens to be the same exact dimension because, hey, square is a shape, right? So I happen to be square. So now I'm going to take that dimension and I'm going to transfer it to the fabric. So the easiest way, the measurements that I needed for my granddaughter were the fat quarter. So if you have a child that's slender and about 6 or 7 years of age, that's what you're going to do. So I'm going to fold this in half. And then I wanted to do, for this one, I need to straighten it up. And not all fat quarters are straight as well. So the first thing that I did is fold it in half, and then I'm going to fold it in half again. And these are my kind of registration points. So I'm folding it in half, and I'm folding it in half again. And so now I have these lines on my apron. This is the middle section of my apron because I have folded it in half. And so if I want my, my granddaughter to wear this apron and for it to fit, here, I'm going to have to bring this in towards the middle. So I'm going to have to curve and bring it in towards the middle like this. So I'm going to remove 25% on either side of this apron. So I'm just going to fold it in half. And you can take anything that curves, it's up to you, doesn't really matter. And I'm going to use a friction pen because it erases. But I'm going to take and I'm going to make like a little curve right here where those two intersect. So let me just go over. This is 25% of my apron. I'm going to make a little curve right there. And then I'm just going to complete this all the way to the top. If you want to angle that a little bit, you can. Because if you notice some aprons are kind of angled, but if you want to angle it a little bit, you can. And then you're going to bring this out straight out. And that's how you give the little apron shape. So let me just go over it again. Fold it into fourths. So you can see how this is curving and going up, right? All right. So now I'm going to take, and I need to add a seam allowance because I want a seam allowance in there. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to add a seam allowance of a 1/2 inch. On the outside. So I'm just going to come in here just like that. I'm going to draw my seam allowance. And now I can go ahead and cut this. And I'm going to cut both sides at the same time. Save that in your scrap bin because that's a nice little size. All right, so now that I have this, I have the general shape of the apron, right? And if you notice, I've left a good little, about 1 inch up here at the top for it to fold back because this is where we're going to make the little chest of the apron. And so now I'm going to take it, and this is my pattern. I can now go ahead and use this. So what I'm going to do for this apron is I'm going to cut 2 matching pieces. But before I cut the 2 matching pieces, I'm going to quilt one of these. I have to decide which is the front and which is the back. And for me, this is going to be the, let me see. What do you guys think? I think this is going to be the front. So I'm going to go ahead and quilt the front. before I add my pocket. So I'm going to go ahead and just take it just like this. And I can quilt it in any direction I want. It doesn't even matter. But I am going to leave this right here about 1 inch unquilted. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that because I don't want to quilt that section. I'm going to take and leave that unquilted because I'm going to fold it down. I'm going to mark about 1.5 inches to give myself a seam allowance. And I don't want to quilt that. So this is going to be unquilted. Now I'm going to come over to the machine and I'm just going to quilt straight lines all over this. So whether you piece this with jelly roll strips or whether you use a whole fat quarter like I'm doing, you're going to want to do some quilting because that makes this substantial. All right, so let me go over to the sewing machine. I don't need a walking foot for this. If you have one, that's great. But I'm going to reduce the pressure on my presser foot. And what that does is that allows my my fabric to move freely underneath the needle. So I'm just going to lift that up. I'm going to lengthen my stitch. So I'm going to lengthen this. So where it is about 2.9 stitches to the inch. And I'm just going to come through here. And I'm going to add some quilting lines. I don't need very many. And I'm quilting it directly on my batting. There's no backing. You don't need one. Going to add a few lines. You can do a little grid. You can do diamonds on point. However you want to do it. Doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that you stretch it with your hands as you do it. Just like that. I'm just eyeballing mine, but if you want to measure yours exact, I've been doing this so long that I can make consistent quilting lines by just eyeballing it, really. This has little dots on it, so I'm following the dots. And look, just like that, I'm getting it all quilted. And look at how quickly this goes together. You could probably make these little aprons if you were doing like a last minute holiday gift. You could probably make these little aprons in less than an hour. These are great for Thanksgiving. Use those specialty fabrics like Halloween fabrics if you have the grandkids coming over. All right. And just come over one more time. And the method that I'm going to show you for putting this together, just so you guys are wondering, is going to avoid having to make a bunch of bias binding or anything else like that. So I'm going to be showing you basically a shortcut method. All right, so let me just pull this down, and I'm almost done with all the quilting. like I said, if you want to machine quilt this panel, or if you have a long arm and you just want to long arm a couple of these together, that works too. But you don't need any fancy equipment to get this done. Just like that. Flip it around and it's just one continuous line of quilting. All right, does anybody have any questions so far? I'm sure that some of you guys are probably twitching at the thought of just freestyling this stuff, but I want you to get in the habit of not being obsessed with perfection. Perfectionism is literally the death of many a quilter. I used to be obsessed with it, but then I learned it's probably an unhealthy thing. All right. It took a long time for me to let go of that perfectionist gene that I was practically born with, I guess. All right. And then just like this. Almost done. I have about 2 more passes and then I'm finished with this part. And absolutely done is better than perfect. Besides, this is going to get used by children. They're going to play in this apron, paint in this apron, make memories in this apron. If you spend too much time making it perfect, maybe they're going to be afraid to get it dirty. And this is for making memories. So you're taking your scraps that are in your sewing room and you're just making memories. All right. And now that I've gotten to the bottom, same as the top, I'm going to leave about 1 inch that's unquilted. And I'm just going to come off the end of this and we'll call it a day. All right, so let me show you what I've got so far so you can see. All right, so now I have this little apron. And this is a good time to give it a little press. If you use a friction pen, those little lines will go away. This is 100% cotton batting that I'm using on this one. I'm just going to give it a little press. Check for any puckers. I don't have any puckers, and now I'm ready to trim. And then I'm going to give it a little trim, and I'm going to get rid of this. Save these little leftover bits of batting because they make great eyeglass cases to give as gifts. They make great for little cozies for your winter tailgating friends. So save these little bits because these are perfect for little coffee cup cozies. And I have a pattern. If you want coffee cup cozies, there's a pattern on my website. I did a video for those and those little bitty coasters if you want to make little coasters of them. Okay, so now that I have this and I've trimmed it all the way around like this on both sides, I'm going to trim these sides right here and across the bottom. I do not save these little strips unless I'm making bag straps. All right, so now that I have that, I'm going to get rid of this stuff at the bottom. And I'm going to layer it. So this is how I'm going to get away from having to do a bunch of bias binding, because I'm not a fan of doing a bunch of bias binding. I'm just not. All right, so now that I have it, I can go ahead and give it one good hard press. And that's just so that I don't get any weird puckers. And all that those quilting lines are doing is just keeping all of your batting from shifting around. And so let me just, and look, all those lines disappeared. So now that I have this little apron, I'm going to remove back here where I had an inch, I'm going to remove the batting down to that line. And I'm going to leave about 1/16 of an inch of batting, just like that. So now I have this little bit, just like this, and you can fold it over. And so this will save us from having to do stuff later. All right, the same with this bottom. If I wanted to remove this, I could, but I'm going to leave it on there for now. Okay, now I'm going to lay what's going to be my back on top, because I'm going to be sewing all the way around, and I want pretty side to pretty side. Just like this. Pretty side to pretty side. I'm going to line up those selvages, so this should be your selvage. And here at the bottom, and I haven't cut it off. And I'm going to pin this together. You can use regular pins. You can use clips, but just a couple of pins. Not a lot, because I tend to stab myself. All right. Just a few pins. And now what we're going to do is we're going to sew from here on down, and then we're going to sew down these sides, and then we're going to turn it inside out. Okay, so we're going to sew again down this side, down this side, and down this side. But before we do that, we're going to put in our little straps. So let's talk about the little straps. My little straps are made with little bits of jelly roll strips. So these are half jelly roll strips that I had in my sewing room. And you can do the same thing. Like I said, you can use your binding, you can use whatever you want. But you're just going to take these strips and you're going to fold them in half, these jelly roll strips, and you're going to fold them in half again. Let me show you how I made mine. Let's see where it is. So this was a jelly roll strip, 2.5 inches by width of fabric. And you're just going to cut it in half so that it ends up about 2.5 inches by about 22 inches. And then you're going to take, and if you have one of these, great, but if you don't have one, you don't need one. If you have a bias binding maker like this one says like 25 centimeters, then it'll just make it easier for you to do this. But you're going to take and you're going to kind of fold it like this into itself. And sometimes if the straps are short, it's easier to just do it yourself. And then you're going to stick a pin in there. Yeah, I'm going to use my big one. So this is slightly bigger. This is 30 inches. This one I bought for jelly roll rugs. If you've ever made jelly roll rugs, you know what a pain it is to fold all that stuff. But you're just going to fold it in like this. And then you're going to shove it through the little hole. You're going to use a pin to kind of tease it onto the other side. Like that. and it folds it as you go. This is why I like it, so that you can press and fold at the same time. You're just going to pull it out, and you want that to fold in half like this. So in the middle, and then halfway to each side. And I'm just going to kind of hold it with a pin and hold it with a pin. You can use a seam roller if you want, or you can just press it with your iron. And I like it because it goes really, really fast to make these little straps. But if you don't have one of those nifty tools, you can always just kind of fold your fabric in half. I can't tell you how many times I've burned my fingers doing this little task, but I still like it anyway. And you just pull it, pin it again to hold it in place. And then you just kind of pull as you go. And that's the easiest way to fold this. And this is a bias tape maker. So if you've ever made jelly roll rugs, you know how much folding and pressing is required. All right, so now that I have that, and I have each half folded into the middle, I'm going to take the end and I'm going to fold it down. And I'm going to fold it in and fold it in again. And then I'm going to fold it towards the middle. And I'm going to use a pin to shove all that stuff in there. So if you have the little ends, just stick them in there and push it down with your pin and hold it with your fingers. You see what I'm doing? I'm just kind of pushing it. Just like that, and that traps it inside. You can put a pin there, and then I'm going to take it to the machine, and I'm going to sew it down one side and then down to the other side. And this is how I make the little straps. So we're going to be doing this without having to make a ton of bias binding. We're really just going to make 4 little bitty straps using 2 jelly roll strips, and that'll save us a ton of time. All right, so let me go over here. I'm going to pull the string. Anytime you start something like this, pull the string behind you and lay that down. And so I'm going to take a couple of stitches forward. And just like that, I have to thread my machine. You guys have seen me struggle with this machine 5 million times. But a 90-14 needle has a great big hole, so it's easy to do. All right, let me see if I can get in the hole the first time. Oh, and I did. There's a Christmas miracle right there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, hang on to that thread. Let me hold it with this one so you can see what I'm doing. And then I'm going to take 2 stitches, pull that pin, and then take 2 stitches back. And now I can go forward. By doing that, it'll prevent from having that big ugly bird's nest that can happen. And so now I'm going to fold them in half, and I'm stitching right along that edge. Just like that. I'm just going to bring it in here with my fingers. And I'm going to just keep that in there, so you're just going to have to kind of keep that together. If you have little fingernails, like I do, my fingernails are not very long, just use those to kind of keep it all together. And so right along that edge, just like that, you're going to adjust it, sew about 6 inches, adjust it, sew about 6 inches. And you're just sewing that closed. You got to kind of practice. Your fine motor skills are put to the test during this time. All right. So now I'm going to get to the end, I'm going to sew a little bit to the other side, and then I'll flip it around. And I'm just going to sew down the folded side. And that's just to keep your strap from being too curly. Is the reason I'm doing it, because if you don't sew it on both sides, it tends to curl up a whole lot. Looks like a corkscrew, and that's not what I want. And this will make those straps last a good long time. Get to the end and backstitch, and then you're finished. And that's how you're going to make 4 of those. You're going to make 4. All right. Let me show you how to put them in there. All right, so now I have these 4 straps, and I can go ahead and put the ones on the sides inside. So I'm going to trap them inside. So I'm going to go right here, and right where this is going to meet, I'm going to put one of those straps, and I'm going to pin it to the inside, like this. You're going to want to pin it so that it's out of the way and you're not sewing it. If you want to put a dab of glue there, you can use a dab of glue. Just to kind of keep it in place. And I'm going to come down about my seam allowance, about a 1/2 inch. Bring it inside. I'm going to roll mine just so get it out of the way like this. Let's be safe and put it further down. Okay, like this. I don't want that pin anywhere near where I'm going to be sewing. And then I'm going to take the rest of this, curl it up. And I can put a safety pin or I can clip it, doesn't matter. I just want it completely out of the way. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Now remember, this is the open side, so I'm going to attach it there. Let me grab all those pins I have. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to leave the seam allowance. Take the side that's open, which is, this is the closed side. I'm going to take this side right here. And I'm going to leave my seam allowance, which is about a 1/2 inch. Go ahead and pin it there temporarily. Pin it up out of the way, roll it up. Get it out of here. I don't want to sew it. Okay, so now that I have this contraption, I'm going to go ahead and sew from the bottom. I'm going to leave about, I would say, a good inch from the bottom. I'm going to double backtrack. I'm going to stop here, pivot, and come all the way around and exit out this side. And I'm not even going to cut this yet. I'm just going to go ahead and do one side first. And I'm going to go ahead and just kind of pin it. And the reason I'm using so many pins is because I don't want this stuff to move around on me. I don't want it to shift. So I'm going from the bottom to there, and then I'm going around. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to do both sides. And you don't even need to close it just yet. So you're going like this. And this whole thing is going to take you about an hour from start to finish. I'm moving slower because I'm demoing each step, but if you're in your sewing room and you're working on it, it's going to be faster. Okay, so I'm going to take and sew up here. going to stop and then sew up here. And I'm going to stop up here. I'm going to sew the same thing. I'm going to sew this side. I'm going to sew up and I'm going to stop right here. And then I'm going to show you how to finish this thing up. It'll be so fast. You're going to be like, wow, I'm going to make a bunch of these. All right, sewing machine. Here we go. I'm going to go ahead and sew from the bottom, but I'm going to leave about 1 inch. So this is why I stopped 1 inch short and I did that last one. So I'm going to go ahead and come in here. I'm using a 1/2 inch seam. And I'm going to start right at that bottom stitch line that I have right there. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to back tack right there. Like I said, a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Let me move all of these pins out of the way. Stop right there. I'm going to remove the pin. This is where the strap is. So I'm going to go over that and back tack. And then just when my needle gets over the little strap, then I'm going to pivot. So my strap ended right here and now I'm going to pivot. And if you want, at this point, you can unpin it and just get it out of the way. I'm going to pull it straight out of the bottom, just like that. Just so that it's not in my way and I can lay this flat. So I'm going to pull it so that it comes out. Can you guys see that? And now I'm going to go around the curve, leaving about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to stop up here at the top. Just like this. And I'm going to back stitch. All right, and now I've got to do the other side. Same way. I'm going to start at the bottom. Look. Always check. Always check. Let me see. All right. You guys get to watch me mess with this. Oh, I got it the first time. Look at that. All right, so now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to flip it over. And I'm going to sew the same thing on the other side. If you want, you can pull the strap out a little bit. But just get it out of your way. Smooth it with your hand. And here we go. I'm going to come up here. About a 1/2 inch. And I'm going to backtrack. Unlike traditional quilting where you don't backtrack, this one you do. And I'm going to go ahead and pull pins as I go. Because the last thing you need to do is lose your pins in your sewing room and step on them. All right, I'm going to come around the corner. And I have a pin right here. I'm going to come right where that strap is. Let me backtrack just a hair. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this pin. And then just kind of double back over it just to give it more stability. And I'm going to come out the bottom. And so by doing it this way, By doing an envelope method, I am saving us from having to do a bunch of bias binding because I'm not a fan of bias binding. The more I do it, the less I love it. All right, so now that I'm done, I can go ahead and pull this out. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. So now we get to the clippy stage. So for those of you who know me, I can tell you that I am not a fan at all of bias binding. And so I'm trying to do a shortcut method today. And so we're going to take this out. So you don't stab yourself with a million pins. Go ahead and take them all out. And now we're going to clip these curves. I can go ahead and just remove this strap out of the bottom. And you don't want to take and clip this seam because you want it to be nice and thick. Because we're going to top stitch this and make it look like we did binding without doing actual binding. And so we're taking a shortcut today. All right, so just like that, look, doesn't even have to be fancy. We're going to clip into that seam, so we're going to clip into that curve like this. And that's so it'll lay flat for us. I don't know if any of you had home economics, but you just take these little notches, just like that. And you're just nipping a couple of notches in that curve. Don't cut into your stitching line, you're just cutting clipping the little curves like this. And maybe one more on this side. All right, so I put about 4 notches. I don't know if you can see those, about 4 notches. I'm going to do 4 on the other side, and then I'm almost done. And just in the curvy part, you're just notching it so it'll lay nice and flat. All right, now that I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and flip it inside out. And I'm going to use those straps to pull these little corners out. Just like that. Get it out of there. And now we have our little apron. Up here at the top, we're going to fold these pieces in. I'm going to take this in the front and fold it down. I'm going to take this and fold it down. And we're closing that in there. We're going to stick that in the hole. By doing it this way, you are keeping yourself from having to do binding. All right. Wrestle with it like an alligator. Then I'm going to take my iron and I'm going to press this in here. And you're going to pin that closed just like that. You're going to use a pin. You're going to come in here and you're going to pin that closed. So it'll fold, tuck that in, and close it like that. I'm going to go ahead and use a clippy or a pin. I'm going to hold that in place. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. You're just going to wrestle it until it folds over. All right. There we go. Wrestle with it until it folds over. And now I'm going to press the entire thing before I close it. I'm going to come here I'm going to press it. Just like that. And the reason I left that unsewn at the bottom is so that I can go ahead and close it like this. So I can come in here like this, trim. I'm going to go like this. I'm going to trim this one and fold it inside. So I'm going to trim it and bring it in, and I'm going to sew it. At first I'm going to pin it. Just like that. And it'll give that apron a little bit of structure. This is why we use clippies, because our fingers, there's not enough fingers on my hands. If you don't want the bulk in here in this section, you can trim the batting out, which I might do. I might go ahead and just remove the batting. So I'll pull this little thing out. And I think I'm just going to remove about an inch, maybe less than that. I think a ½ inch. I think an inch is probably fine. And for this procedure, I use this little side self-healing mat. I try not to use my big self-healing mat for cutting batting because the batting can get stuck inside your big mat and then it's a pain to get it out. There we go. That's what I was trying to do. Now all of this stuff is folding the way I want it. You ever get a brain cramp when you're in the middle of sewing? You're like, I've done that. How do I do it again? All right, so now that's laying down flat the way I want it. And I see Harley has joined us. Hi, Harley. All right, so now that I have this, I'm going to go ahead and press, 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 press. This is turning out super cute. All right. I'm going to stick these in just like this. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my little straps inside there and trap them and sew them down. Inside that seam. All right. Oops. Cut side in. And I'm going to go ahead and pin it so that it's nice and neat in that corner. You can clip it if you want. You're going to do the same thing over here. Trap it, trap it. Press it. Press it with your fingers if you want. You're going to stick it down in that corner. Press it tight. And then what you're going to do is you're going to, after you're done wrestling with an alligator, you're going to take and you're going to top stitch this right here. You're going to top stitch it all the way around. And it'll be ready for its pocket. Let me go ahead and tuck this in. Oh, look at how cute that's looking. Tuck it in down here at the bottom. I'm going to use all my clips across the bottom. finger press that into place. And pin it just like this. Tuck it, tuck it, tuck it. Sometimes it helps to just kind of lick your fingers, by the way. Licking your fingers is an official thing. I've seen big name quilters do it. So don't be afraid to lick your fingers as long as your hands are clean, right? There we go. Ooh. My fingers are like, hey. And just like that, we're going to pin this whole thing. This literally feels like wrestling a little baby alligator, but we got it done. All right, so now that it's all tucked in, it's all folded where it needs to go, we're going to top stitch the entire thing. Okay, so we're just going to top stitch the whole thing. So what age is this apron for? So this will fit a child anywhere from about 4 years of age to about 6.5. My grandkids are 4, 6, and 8, so this fits my grandchildren. And you can measure your little person and decide what size apron they need by just taking their measurements. All right, so now this whole thing gets closed up. You can top stitch it in a decorative stitch. You can top stitch it in any type of stitch you want. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to start it over here on this corner. And I'm going to top stitch it close to the edge. Here at the top, to trap that in there. Can you guys see me? Let me move my camera back. There we go. And then I'm just going to come right here. And this is a lot of fabric. There's a lot of thickness here, so you're going to want to make sure you have a good, nice needle in there. And that you go slow. Don't bend your needle and break it. You're going to tickle it with your fingers as you go. If you notice, I tickle it to where I want it to go. Just like that, I have saved myself the trauma of a bunch of bias binding, because I just don't think I want that today. And then we're going to come over here. We're going to go across the bottom. As you're closing it, just tickle it with your fingers like this. And sew as close to that edge as possible. Trying not to stretch. And there we go. I'm going to get to the end. Flip it around. And come back the other side. And by using this little envelope method, we have just saved ourselves the headache of having to do any extra binding. Now this apron is great for messy little things. If your little people like to paint or draw or cook, this little apron will keep their clothes clean. And this is a great way to use those, you know, those fat quarters that come with all those cute little prints like gaming prints or, you know, prints that you're like, well, what am I going to do with that? Like, not really enough for a quilt. And when you get to the top, you're going to come across here. You're going to make sure that that's all tucked in. And then you're going to come across just like that. And you're going to close it up. Like I said, try not to wrestle a bear. And then I'm going to come back down and just close where I started, just like that. Okay, now comes the pocket. The pocket is optional. You don't have to do a pocket at all. But if you want an apron with a pocket, you can. And you're just literally going to fold this piece of fabric that I showed you earlier that you have, just like I did before. So I have this little pocket right here. And just like we did the apron, we're going to take and sew down the sides, leave an opening, turn it inside out, press it, and add it right here. And you're just going to stitch down the sides and across and then leave this open. You can even put a seam down the middle to make two little pockets. So that's it, friends. You're going to use an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And that is it. Super, super easy. So this little apron, like I said, will fit most children. So let me just show it how it turned out. It'll fit most kids. So you have two little straps to go around their neck like this. And then you have this little strap to go around their waist. And this little apron will fit most kids between the ages of like 4 and 8. I measured both of my grandkids, and that's it, friends. You have a little reversible. It's both sides, so if it gets really gross on one side, you can put it on the other. And when you wash it, it gets really, really soft. And that, my friends, is a little tiny kid's apron. Make yourself a few of these for the little people in your life. And they're going to love it, I promise you. Even if it's not perfect, they're going to love it. All right, everybody, I will see you guys again at 6. Thank you for joining me. We have my favorite things, and I have some updates for that. But I'll see you guys in about an hour. I'm going to go take a break. Bye, everybody. Have a good one. See you soon. Bye-bye. Oh, Rosina, it was nice to see you. Say hello to all of the German friends out there. Bye.